I'm a big believer in find that leader. And I'm not talking about, a manager or a senior manager with that title. Find the leader, and I hope it's okay to use this, find the leader of the pack.
Welcome to Process Pioneers, the show that takes a deep dive into the minds of decision makers, key influencers, and process experts who are pioneering the world of everything process.
Welcome to another episode of Process Pioneers. My name is Daniel Rayner. I'm the host of Process Pioneers, and just like the introduction you would have just heard said, this is a show where we sit down with different BPM practitioners and specialists that are putting BPM into practice. What does that look like for an organization? How do you, gain those the value for an organization through BPM? And maybe what are some of the challenges that you're facing along the way? So today I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with Helen Goltsios. Now, Helen is a senior business process consultant. So I'm very excited for this interview. Helen has worked with some of Australia's largest organizations, so I'm sure has a lot of experience and stories to bring. So Helen, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So what might be a good place to start is and this is something our audience does like to understand and get context for, is when were you first introduced to the topic of BPM, and take us on a bit of a journey leading up to what you're doing today.
Yeah, so I actually had the opportunity to actually do my Six Sigma Green Belt when I first got into the workforce with GE Fleet at the time. And I didn't know that I was going to like, the process mapping, the process improvement journey, and I just absolutely loved it. So that's when my journey started. So I was very lucky that I got involved in some projects back then. And then when I moved to GE Security, I spent, even though my role was a customer service manager and looking after a customer service team across APAC, my role was to actually document processes, map out all the processes, find improvements. And the journey hasn't stopped there, and quite passionate about it. And I've, stayed in that field since then. So, and learnt a lot of things along the way. So as you mentioned, I have worked probably about 4 years ago, I decided to go and do more consulting contract type of work. Right. So I have worked with, companies such as NBN and Telstra and Adobe and some great companies that actually do have a very good framework, but needed someone to come in and sort of assist them with the process journey and not only just process mapping, but gaining that buy-in from the people on the ground, which we forget about a lot of the time. So yes. That's been my journey so far. It's been
That's
good.
Great. That's awesome. And you would have seen, with that range of experience, you would have seen, a number of challenges that organizations face when adopting BPM. What are some of the main challenges that an organization will face?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenges are actually first of all, gaining that buy-in from others. And when I say others, sometimes it's gaining that buy-in from senior leaders. So right. One leader might have a great idea about, let's sit down, let's start looking at our processes, let's get a, modeler in to help us with it. It's actually gaining that buy-in from leaders, from, frontline employees. That's probably one of the biggest ones. And we'll probably go into why I think that's a challenge. Second one is also identifying owners and responsibility. Okay, great. We've got Helen in, she's helping us model it, but okay, who's going to own it once Helen goes, and who's going to be responsible for it? So the governance, the control, the responsibilities, but also I think what's quite hard for some businesses and some of the challenges I think I've had in leaders understanding is identifying what works for them, what works for their business, their employees, their customers. Because, and it's been great to see BPM world evolve. It's not one size fits all anymore, which it used to be back in the early 90s. Right. So it's actually nice to see that businesses are happy to not just go with certain models, they're happy to adapt, and it's what works for them. So there's a couple of things that could be challenging at the beginning, but as time goes on, I think they actually start seeing it evolve.
Yes, right. And I guess depending on who you're talking to, you would need to, I guess, understand, well, what has their experience been like in BPM? For example, if you're talking to a senior leader that has just come from another organization where maybe the program of work or the project fell flat on its face, because BPM hadn't been adopted or implemented well. Maybe maybe there was a big exercise to, hey, let's map everything, but it kind of just sat there, all that documentation collecting dust, didn't get used. And so, I'd imagine sometimes, maybe in your case, maybe in other people that are listening, that they'll be working with senior leaders, that you've got to understand, well, what is their context for BPM? What's their perspective on BPM? What are some of how has it worked for them in the past? And that will determine how you frame it or how you pitch it if you do want to get that buy-in, I'd imagine.
100%. And a lot of the times that's what I do when first walk into a business, is understand, well, how are they using BPM at the moment, or what framework are they currently using, and what do they want to move to, if they do want to move to it. So an example is currently I'm working with a particular business where they do have a very good framework, but they've got lots of people in the business actually building some of these process maps with no structure around not only how they look, which doesn't really matter sometimes, but what does the bigger picture look like? And how is it all going to get plugged in? So it's having those conversations, having those really open conversations and saying, well, I'm not saying it to do it this way, and maybe, what is working, what doesn't work, or what's going to work for this business and our customers and our employees. So I think that's really, really important, because one person's idea of what they think is going to work because it has worked, or what they think is not going to work because it hasn't worked where they've come from. I think you need more ideas on the table, and it should be a collaborative decision, to be honest.
Right. And when you were saying, talking about the bigger picture, being able to see the bigger picture, are you talking about having like a process structure or process hierarchy, so you can see how the granular detail ties in with the overall strategy of the organization? Or what do you mean by the big picture?
The big picture is exactly that, the hierarchy.
Right.
Who are we? What do we do? What do we want to achieve? So that's and I think it sort of sits around who are we and what do we do.
Right.
And you had a speaker, I think it was Alex, who said, and one thing that I think really, really works is understanding what that activity is, because I've been in businesses where, you're working top down and you're saying, okay, so what's the big picture, and, how should we look and what do we do? But sometimes it's actually better working from the bottom and understanding the activity, and then building up what we actually do and who are we. Because I think sometimes we don't realise all the little activities and all the little bits that, that are happening. And it's not just senior leaders, but shareholders and other people in the business don't actually realise all that goes on. So it's good to actually sit down and brainstorm that and then build that hierarchy.
Right. So for someone listening right now that has only ever heard that you must get C-level executive sponsorship, you must get that senior leadership buy-in. I'm sure that what you just said has sort of piqued their interest there. How do you get started from a bottom-up approach? Which people do you need to rally? Who do you bring into the picture? What does a bottom-up approach look like?
Yeah, good question. And if anyone's got a good, if anyone's got a good method around it, look, it does have its challenges, because I'm a big believer in find that leader. And I'm not talking about, a manager or a senior manager with that title. Find the leader, and I hope it's okay to use this, find the leader of the pack. Right. Because there's lots of leaders in businesses. So there's people that are influential, people that are, quite, they do get other co-workers on board. So find out who they are, speak to them, get them involved, ask them questions, take them on the journey, and you'll be surprised. And there's been some studies done that you only need 30% buy-in.
Right.
But if you find those leaders, those people that actually, people follow, you've got the rest of them, following with you. And of course, you're going to get people who just aren't interested, and that's fine also. But if you actually, and that's what I usually do, I'll go in and see who are the influential people. If I can actually get them to understand why it's needed, how it's going to assist the business, what it means in the future, how much time it's going to save, how much, all the things that it's going to bring. If I can get in their ear, it happens almost organically after that.
Yes, right.
It's a really good question, and it is a challenge, and I'm up for any ideas. So anyone has got other methods, I'm up for it, because I think that's something this community and this particular what you've built here, it will help to actually discuss some of our experiences and different ways we can do that, because it is a challenging one.
Definitely. I love what you're saying there about, finding those raving fans, those people that you can get on board very easily because they resonate with this type of thinking. And as you're talking, I had this funny comparison in my mind where it's very similar in a way to an organization, a business entering into a new market, and trying to build brand awareness and create awareness around their products and services, and I guess finding those influential people. I mean, there's the last 5-10 years we've heard so much about influencers, through the different social media platforms. You've got influencers on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and all of these different channels, and that those people are generally who, clever businesses will go to first, because they know that, hey, these individuals are very influential. If we can get them on board, if we can get them promoting our product or our service, we know that that's just going to open up to everyone that's listening to these individuals. We actually don't need to go direct to those people. We just need to find the influential ones. And I think we can learn from that. In the organizations we work in, who are the internal influencers, who are the people that are driving stuff already, or do have a lot of people listening to them, regardless of where they sit on the spectrum or like in the hierarchy. Because I think finding those people that will be able to rally behind the idea, resonate with the idea, that's going, you need people to start a movement or to bring change. And so it's finding those people. I like that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think once you, not only that, good examples is another way, showing them what good looks like.
Right.
There's a lot of times where I'll go and benchmark and see, especially depending on what industry I'm working with, go and benchmark and see what best in class looks like. And a lot of times, if you've got that information too, you can actually, go to this, especially with the seniors leaders, and say, well, you realise our competitors are using this methodology, let's go for it. Why don't we try and do the same? Or why don't we better it and maybe do A, B, C, and D? So
yes,
I think
right.
you've got to have those examples also.
Yes.
You've got to have done your research, and also what does it mean for them? In a lot of cases is, where are the benefits? Money, How much money are you going to save? How much time are you going to save? So all those things, I think it's hard for them to argue. And I've always said senior leaders cannot argue with data. So if you've got the data there, they just no senior leader I've worked with has gone, nah, not interested.
Yes.
So there's some of the things.
And in speaking about benchmarking, it's obviously much easier to know where you're aiming when you are, I guess, looking at the goalposts that your competitors have set. How do you go about defining your own goalposts if you do want to go beyond that, if you do want to, I guess, create the future in a sense and pioneer in a new space? How do you come up with, even if it's just looking at an individual process, how do you go about hypothesizing what is possible and what can we achieve through improvements here?
Yeah, so there's lots of different things that I use, and I've got I've been lucky that I've got a pretty good toolbox of different things that I might pull out depending on what the who I'm working with and the situation. I think, look, my approach is if we're looking at what current state looks like, so we've mapped out what current state looks like, and we're looking at, okay, where are the gaps? And, we've done a gap analysis, where are the gaps and what are some of the improvements we want to put in place? I always say to people, come up with a couple of solutions. Come up with, make sure that you've got the quick fixes, what do we want to fix right now? The low-hanging fruit. Also, the next step after that, what can we do with extra people and then look at technology, new technology. So I always try and cover all three because as you know, businesses are actually, there's money restraints, there's time restraints, there's resource restraints. So I always at least try and achieve something, because sometimes the solution might be, just one solution, which is let's change all our technology, or let's put workflows in place, or, to automate something but it's a very, very good way of managers to just switch off, or senior managers to go, no, we're not spending money. So always bring something more to the table. And that's something that I always try and do. Bring in a couple of solutions and let them decide. And majority of the time they will go, let's fix the quick fixes. Let's see how we go after that, and then, carry on the journey. Yeah. But always have a couple of solutions up your sleeve.
Yes, yeah.
Because you feel like you're achieving something too afterwards.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And I think having those restraints sometimes I'd say a very good thing in helping the team to stay focused on, well, what is possible with our resources, with our time, with our technology, what is the maximum value we can already deliver through what we currently have access to. I was talking to someone the other day, and they were working in an organization where the way he kind of articulated, at least, it sounded like money wasn't a problem, as in they could, that they've played with all of the tools, they've played with all of the technology, but what he was finding was that it's oftentimes they're just putting Band-Aid fixes on top of other Band-Aids. It's they're not actually being forced to, I guess, think through it clearly and I don't know exactly what it was, but he was just communicating in a way that was like, we've got all of these half executed solutions, that isn't really achieving what we set out to achieve, because if we see a problem, we just throw money at it and try and fix it without really thinking through,
doing a root cause analysis to see what's really going on.
Exactly.
And I think that's the biggest it rubs me up the wrong way sometimes. It rubs me up the wrong way only because, and I'll give you a really, really good example. I was working with a really passionate tech support team.
Right.
And at one stage, and this was before I was doing some of this contracts and consulting work, and at one stage this team was reporting to me, and their greatest service levels were always low. And every time I walked into that room, they kept on saying to me, we need more people. We just need more people. Helen, we need more people. So I pulled them out of that room one day and we did a bit of a workshop, and we started looking at, and some of the tools that your 5 whys, and why is this happening? Why is our greatest service so low? And once we did this drill down, we found out what the root cause was. And it wasn't they don't have enough staff. It was they were all going to lunch at the same time. They were all starting work at the same time. They were all going home at the same time. So it was just a matter of adjusting and putting them on a bit of a roster, because it was only a small tech support team, only about 3 or 4 people, but putting them on a roster, helping them with, quick reference guides to troubleshoot some of the really common problems they were having. We set up this great support, like a customer support portal, so they were getting less calls. So it was amazing just looking at what is the root cause and drilling down. We put so many things in place, and they were quick wins. Yes. And the greatest service increased by 50% in that, by the second, third week. So it's a real, I think we need to stop sometimes, and especially as process modelers, and if we have the opportunity to go and present what we think some of the issues are and what future state should look like. If we don't have the skills, there's lots of people that do reach out and actually do a drill down before you actually present what we think, what some of the solutions are, because that's when projects get stopped. We think technology is going to fix it, resource are going to fix it, and then we don't see any improvements. So I'm a big... that's why I get quite passionate about that root cause. Let's find out what is really going on. And we don't do enough of it.
Yes, right. And you were talking before about when communicating value to the senior leadership, they need to know what's in it for them. They need to know the value, what's the return on investment going to be. Do you have a couple of examples or stories you could share of where BPM had been adopted or implemented and it did deliver significant value for a particular project or a particular process or a team or something like that? I think that's something the audience always is encouraged to hear, like when because everyone knows when it hasn't gone well, but what's possible with BPM really?
Look, it's I think the possibility is understanding where the waste is, understanding where we can actually make some improvements. So when I say waste, I've worked in a manufacturing supply chain business in the past. It's waste as in material. You understand where there's waste as in rework. You understand, if it's done properly, because I've done a lot of value stream mapping too. If you you can really understand where your wait times are, where your delay times are. So I think gaining that buy-in from senior leadership is actually having that mapped out and showing them. Right. I actually think visualizing them, taking them, walking them through, it's amazing what comes out of that. And I did have a situation where, I was a business improvement manager for a company, and the MD at the time just come in, he came from a sales marketing background, very, very, and actually he was a lawyer, and couldn't understand why we had so many supply chain problems. And the minute we mapped it out and he could clearly see. So to me, BPM is not just your typical process mapping, it's also your value stream mapping. It's it's using all these different types of maps to show what's going on.
Right.
And once we value streamed exactly what was going on, and we showed him the amount of resources that touch an activity, the technology, and the amount of all the systems that were being used, from email to phone to an actual ERP or MRP system, all the different things that happen. When he looked at this map, he's just gone, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Well, yeah, this is how many people touch a picking slip before the goods are picked, packed and shipped."
Right.
So I think it's really good to get visual. I think if you take them through that visualization, tap into how this person understands information. I think it's a way to do it, because I've worked with a team, at Telstra in marketing, where if I showed them a value stream map, they all would have just glazed over. So I had to actually show them in a different visual way, where I did it in PowerPoint with colourful blocks, and really, really tap into the people that you're talking to. How are you going to get, who's your audience? How are you going to get their interest, and talk their language? Yes,
right. That's great. And with I guess it depends on the process that you're looking at. That's certainly going to determine what's possible in terms of what value does it bring to the business. I've had examples where a process that once visually displayed and you understand what's going on, they've been able to critically think about what's happening and be able to cut down a 3-week process to a 3-day process, because it's like, hey, what is, and I think maybe sometimes the question is, where do these bad processes come from? I think, over time, Band-Aid fixes, people joining the organization, leaving the organization, taking information with them. There's a whole range of reasons why we end up with these really cumbersome processes, and until you can see it as you're talking visually, we can clearly see what's going on. I guess you don't question it until you have the data in front of you. It's like, it seems to be working well. Like, I don't exactly know what's going on, but we're still delivering value to the customers, I think. So
correct. And I think the biggest pushback most of the time from people, from employees, and from some leaders is, oh no, the fear of uncovering, what's really going on. Does it mean I'm going to lose my job? Does it mean that, I'm going to come undone? But what I say to people all the time is, why are we wasting our time doing all these, pushing that piece of paper around, rather than really, spending our time as an employee doing the fun stuff? Right. And I always say there's so much, we haven't gone to the stage where, robots and technology are going to take over, what humans do. So I always say to them, look, what do you want to get into? What is your long-term goal for your career? Okay, product management, great. So why are we sitting in customer service pushing the paper around when we can automate that and start getting your skills up to move into product management? So there's always, there is always some pushback, but I think if you get to know the person and get to understand what their goals and career paths are, you can say, well, this is your opportunity. This is your opportunity to either move or you want to get into project management. Great. Help me roll this out, those type of things.
Right. And is that how you would go about fostering that culture of responsibility and accountability? I know you mentioned it before. You mentioned owners of responsibility. is how would you go about creating a culture where people understand the value of, we need to be responsible for the work that we're doing, because if there's a better way, we need to be aware of that and be okay to adapt or pivot or shift. Because I guess if you do have people in key positions within an organization that is fearful of uncovering, maybe some sloppy process work, I can see how that would be a challenge. Like, how do you frame that to them so they're like, oh, we need to do this, like we need to get to the bottom of what's going on?
A really good example, a company that I worked for in my earlier days did this actually very, very well.
Right.
Where the performance reviews with their staff was based around the values and based, the business values and based around productivity.
Right.
So, it's hard to, and this is something that I think we've lost along the way. There's less responsibility, less accountability. Everyone just goes, nah, don't want to own it. But, I have worked with leaders where I've said, well, instead of sitting there measuring how many process maps this person's mapped, why don't we, what does a business look at, measuring the productivity gain this person brings to the business,
Right.
and that actually, it's funny because it's amazing how that actually changes. That person actually wants to become accountable,
Right.
wants the responsibility, wants to find improvement, ways to improve. I haven't seen that, to be honest with you, Daniel. I haven't seen that for many years, but
Right.
it worked so well at GE. GE were very driven by that, and it's hard to get, you speak to some senior managers and they go, oh my God, it's too hard. It's just too hard. It's a good question. I've seen it in the past, but I haven't seen it for a long time now.
Right.
And the minute, I think employees too are saying, look, I've got enough on my plate than to sit there and be an owner of this, this particular process group. I don't know.
Yeah.
Help.
Yes.
Give me ideas, guys. Yeah. But I've seen it work really, really well in the past. And it's been led that way from top down.
Yes. Yeah. And I have heard that as well, that if if you've got a senior leadership that I guess has a very process driven approach, to the way that they manage the organization, then it does filter down that way. I think NBN comes to mind. I'm not sure if you were there when Bill Morrow was there as the CEO, but that's from I had an interview a while back now, but with Anchor Jane, Ravi Ramachandran, Ian Bentley, and they were saying how if there were any problems or issues in what was being done and anything was brought to Bill would always ask, well, what is the process? Do you understand what the process is? If you don't, that's step one. We need to understand what's actually going on. Once we have that bird's eye view or that visual depiction, then we'll be able to make wise and smart decisions around, well, how do we improve that? How do we fix this problem or issue? So I have heard that. But I guess looking at another area I wanted to look at is very relevant to everyone at the moment over the last 2 years or 18 months. Obviously, the world's kind of been thrown into chaos, and that includes the organizations we work in. And organizations have adapted to it differently. Some organizations have actually thrived in the current season. Some organizations have really suffered. Do you think that, have you seen BPM play an important role in the last 18 months? Do you think it has been driven up the priority list? Do you think it's been something that's been pushed aside because it's, maybe it's seen as the cherry on top of the cake? Or what's been your sort of perspective on how BPM's played a role in the last 18 months?
I've seen it being pushed up in the priority list, to be honest. And anyone doing consulting contract work out there is probably poached every day for roles. There are a lot of roles out there at the moment. Businesses are actually reviewing their processes and trying to understand what they can streamline, what they can structure, what they can minimise. There's a lot of work out there for BPM, for modelers. So I think businesses are now starting to realise, oh goodness, we haven't got anyone in the office. We don't have, and even small businesses that were happy with a little administration team and now started saying, okay, well, what technology can we put in place, to assist our employees? So I actually think it's been pushed up.
Yes.
I've seen a huge, let's just say so I do lots of contract type of work in the last 2 years, and I've been working from home for over 3 years now. So working from home isn't new for me, but they're happy to, in the last 2 years, it's the roles out there, I don't think anyone's been out of work in this field.
Right.
It's an exciting time for BPM. It's an exciting time for those that are modelers or, process engineer experts. It's a really exciting time because there's lots of things happening out there.
Right.
And there's going to be a huge importance in this piece of work. Yes. I think even for the next 3 years.
Right.
So it is good.
Yeah, that's good. And would you say that the emphasis has been more on the internal processes and the employee experience, or would you say there's been more of an emphasis on the new journey we're taking our customers on, or has it been a 50-50?
Yeah, 50-50 actually.
Right.
50-50. There's a lot of customer experience journey type of roles.
Yep.
So a bit of both. Of both. And I think too, with the evolving technology around BPM too, I think, businesses never thought to, do we need these type of tools in our organisation? Now, there's businesses who do want to bring in, ProMap and Signavio, do want to spend that money, and which is quite good, because I think one of the challenges in the past when, years ago when I was working in this field was the governance and control. So around documentation and our process maps and work instructions, businesses are now going, we need something that's going to, govern and control some of all the work that we've put in. So yeah, I'm seeing an increase in that, which is really, really good.
Yeah, great. And speaking of the future, what do you see coming over the next 2, 3, 5 years when looking at the BPM space, and where would you be encouraging? And now every organization is at a different starting point, but where would you encourage them to be spending their time, effort, and energy when it comes to BPM? Obviously, some will be more at the foundational stages. Others are going to be diving into the process mining and RPA and things like that. But what do you see?
Oh, it depends on who you speak to. It depends on who you speak to. Look, there's going to be automation. Yeah. Every business I've spoken to and worked with, they want to automate as much as they can, and they want to actually use their employees more for the customer experience rather than, and I think there's going to be a big shift. Especially with COVID over the last couple of years, a lot of call centres that were moved offshore have now moved back.
Right.
So, businesses, and we know a lot of Australian businesses that did that, and are now trying to, bring technology to automate some of the processes. So it's all automated, but they're bringing frontline workers in to actually now be the people answering the phone. So it'll be interesting to see. I think we're going to revert back to the way it was, 5-10 years ago, because we're going to have no no option, but I actually think customer satisfaction will go up.
Yes.
Due to
Right.
it. And businesses will need, a lot of the manual processes actually automated. So RPA is a big one, workflow, any type of workflows. And now we've got technology, SharePoint. You can create workflow on SharePoint now, or
Right.
Teams even.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there's lots out there. There's lots out there that you can help businesses process map, but also execute, which is the exciting bit.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And I suppose that as there are more practitioners that are trained up and looking at, I had a call just yesterday with a team based in Sydney, an organisation in Sydney, and they what they're doing to empower their subject matter experts and their people to look for and identify improvement opportunities. It's quite amazing what they're doing, and the group that they're rallying together, because they've recognized, hey, we're just a small group of people. We don't want to be the bottlenecks here. In fact, we want to empower as many of the team as possible. People that they're not BPM managers or specialists, but what tools can we equip them with? Because these subject matter experts, they're in the best position to identify areas for improvement and change and automation and things like that. So I think for those that are listening, if you are in a small team and you feel like, I don't have resources, well, I guess as we were saying towards the beginning, find those people that do resonate with this sort of process-centric approach, have these conversations, bring them on board, and then find out how can we empower people instead of being a bottleneck for this space. So I think the more that people are trained up in this, and then they move from organization to organization, we're going to see it just continue to grow and build.
100%. And I've done no training around process mapping.
Right.
I was given the opportunity. I would have been in my sort of mid-20s. I had a great mentor and leader at the time.
Yeah.
And because I was actually in a role running a customer service team in Australia, and it was actually rolling out some of those processes into businesses in Asia. So I had this great mentor, great leader who introduced me to Visio and, with no training and, using the helpful guides and things like that, and worked my way through, and learned how to use it. But, anyone can do it if you want to. So I think that's why it's really important to find those that are interested, those that are passionate about it, those that really want to make a difference. It's not hard to use some of these tools, but help them along. And look, my background's at teaching, so I just love teaching, not just teaching others, but helping others really grow their skills, but also really achieve some great outcomes. So find those people that are willing to learn, because just like I learned from a great leader, they'll learn from you.
Yes, right. And for that person that's listening to this, that maybe this conversation has piqued their interest in BPM. Maybe they already had an interest, but they weren't quite sure what it was going to look like in their organization, and this has really encouraged them. Where would you encourage them to go to, I guess, learn more? I guess especially if they're in an organization where it isn't talked about, that they don't have a leader or a mentor that they can approach internally. Where would you encourage that person to go if they do want to learn more about this topic, and what is right for their organization? How do they understand what the fundamentals are? Different things like this.
Yeah, good question. And I think, to be honest with you, Daniel, I think this particular forum, to be honest,
right,
because there's a lot on, you can go and do research, you can go and Google, but everything, as everyone knows, everything's just a whole lot of words. You're not getting, you can jump on Nintech's site, that they specialize in a great tool, but then again, you're getting all the marketing stuff. You're not getting real life chats. I think this forum's great. You know, I've been in the field for a long time, and I've just learned quite a lot from others that are experiencing, that are in the same field, or have had, you know, consultants that have been doing it for many, many years and built their own frameworks. I think talk to the people that jump on LinkedIn, follow some of your interviews and watch some of your interviews, but jump on and see, you know, get in touch with process experts and ask them. I think that's the best way to learn, to be honest, and the best way to, you know, some ideas and a good way to get a mentor that you might not have in the business. I wouldn't bother Googling it, because there's so much information out there, and it'll just, your brain will explode. So talk to the people doing it. Talk to the people that are in there actually, that are experts at it.
Yes, absolutely. And I must say, I love that piece of advice. And I must say that all of the people I've interviewed have been more than open, and have welcomed for the audience and the listeners to reach out to them, to get in touch, because, you know, they've been, whether they've been in the industry for 5 years, 20 years, 40 years, you know, if you the people I've interviewed, at least, I can't say for everyone, but they have this passion to be able to give back, to share their knowledge, to share their experiences, and to try and help people that are further back on the journey than they are, not have to face the same challenges and obstacles and hurdles. They do get an excitement. There is an excitement in being able to help people overcome similar challenges and hurdles, or bypass them altogether. So yeah, I think for those that are listening, I would encourage you, if there are any speakers you've noticed on any of the interviews, feel free to reach out, because they've all expressed, or most of them have directly expressed an interest in being able to connect with you, and being able to understand, well, where are you at? Where do you want to go? And how can I help you? And some of these are consultants, but some of these are working in organizations just like you are. So I think it's good people to get advice from.
Yeah, 100%. And I wish this was around years and years ago. It would have helped me. But yeah, 100%. Speak to and the other thing I've realised, working with other process experts and process modelers, very, very passionate. Everyone's very passionate about making a difference. So yeah, and I think that's why you do get that feedback from your interviewees, you know, reach out, I'll help you. You know, we're very passionate about it in a quirky way.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
I say to people, I'm a process nerd, and they go, what? Yeah, I know, I love this stuff.
Yeah, I must say I have seen the title process nerd on a lot of LinkedIn profiles, as the way they sort of present themselves. So.
Yeah, you know, you do get quite passionate, and it's funny, it comes into those that are passionate about it. You know, you need to stop and see your everyday life, because we do it even at home. You know, we do it in our everyday life, where we have a process, you know, everything it drives our family crazy, but it's just the way we're wired, and we are passionate, and look, you know, more than happy to speak to anyone. I don't have, you know, you've had some great speakers where, you know, I'm not a guru, but I'm more than happy to share my experience with people and help them with some of the tools and some of the challenges and whatnot. Yeah, more than happy to speak to anyone.
That's fantastic. Well, Helen, I've certainly been learning a lot from this conversation. I've been taking a bunch of notes, and I hope the listeners, you know, you got out your notepad and pens as well. But Helen, I just want to thank you for sitting down with me today. I'm sure that the audience has gleaned a lot from our conversation, and yeah, it's been an absolute privilege.
Thank you so much, Daniel, and great work. Continue it. It's been brilliant.